You're talking to Dr. Clark. What are you going to tell us today, Dr. Clark? Tell us some fun stuff.
Well, I can tell you some very heartening stuff.
That's fun stuff.
Right?
You bet.
And that is the good news about how much simpler it is to cure cancer now than it was 10 years ago. At that time, I said there was a cancer cure, but it was fairly difficult. And now the cure is so much easier because I found the actual carcinogen or the cancer-causing substance that causes all of our cancers, and we have learned how to take it out of the body and have found to our great delight that the cancer stops. It is dependent on its mutagens and the mutations, in other words, in order to continue. When you take those away, the whole thing stops. Very good news.
Well, I would say so. Yeah, that's marvelous news.
And we have built a new program around it, and this is the program. Just 3 pages, and such simple things as taking hot showers and getting the carcinogen off your skin and out of your bedding and having no more contact with it, and then going home and cleaning up the whole house because you were getting it from the water that you were bringing into the house.
The piped water that's plumbed into the house primarily?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Most of it, I would say half of it about, comes from a filter that people attached. And it's really caused by the disinfectant in the water, not the water itself. The disinfectant is chlorine, but the chlorine gas isn't the problem. It's later on when the water is fairly near to your house, where the residential area is. That's where the water company has to put a pump station that regulates the amount of the chlorination. And so with that, they have to use a liquid, not a gas, and they're using bleach, sodium hypochlorite, a bleach, to add to the water to give it the disinfecting action that we need. But some bleach has additives and toxicities that are really very terrible, and that is where this cancer-causing agent is found. So you have to remove it all from your house, and it's pretty easy. It's as easy as taking all the filters and the softeners, water softeners, off. The city itself usually gives us about 1/4 of the bad water problems. So they're adding bleach, disinfectant, which is not NSF rated. In other words, it's not food grade very often. But that's only about 25%. Most of it is coming from filters, which are disinfected with the bad bleach too.
And the bad bleach is not the NSF bleach, but it's a...
That's right. It's the regular laundry bleach that you would find in the supermarket.
The cheap stuff.
Well, and it's much easier to run to a supermarket and get it than go to a special place.
Like a pool supply place that would have the original...
The correct bleach, yes.
Which is called what again?
NSF.
Or
NSF
hyperchlorite?
Sodium hypochlorite.
Sodium hypochlorite.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. That's good information. And
I think people can clean up their own houses now and clean up their own bodies and not be terrified of getting cancer anymore. But it is a big job, and if possible, a person should learn to use a syncrometer so you can test the water and the food. Of course, the food has the same cancer-causing agent in it because it was made with the water that was disinfected with it.
And if they had the syncrometer, they could check their progress on cleaning up the house and
yes,
and check the things that they're eating and
yes,
and
that's part of the it's part of the service or gift that we put into our program, teaching them to use a synchrometer free of charge, because I think that's the most fundamental skill a person can have to safeguard their health.
Yeah. And the synchrometer is something that you put together some years ago.
Yes, it's a simple little circuit, just an oscillator, a little oscillator, the kind that you would use in front of a hobby radio.
Radio Shack hobby kit.
Yes, or any other radio. They all have an oscillator in the circuit, and when you put an oscillator on the body, you can get the same kind of information as you would be getting if you were listening to a distant transmitter.
Could we look at yours here, just to uncover it just for a quick second,
Yes. Okay.
and see what it is all about?
Yes. Just these few wires makes the circuit, and the circuit is connected to this set of open capacitor plates, which is where the energy is displayed of whatever is in the circuit. If it's your body or a bottle or an object, then that will be displayed on that capacitor. And then the usual rules of electronic supply, so that inductance and capacitance have a relationship, and so on.
Yeah, what we just looked at was the synchrometer, and it's made with a Hobby Kit 200 from Radio Shack. There are many of them on the market, and some of them are good. Not very many, perhaps, that are on the market that has expanded greatly in the last few years that are really good and effective. But
there are quite a few makers of synchrometers, but the buyer beware, since the people who make them can't do the testing. And
they really don't know how good their results are because they can't test.
Right.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's surprising how many good ones there are. And although I suggest that people, make their own from the circuit that I give them, it's not realistic to think that everybody's going to do that. So you pretty well have to rely on whoever made it, but you can of course test it, and I think that the ones on the market, at least certain ones, are excellent.
And they're all described in your books, and also how to use them, and you have a synchrometer manual that tells very explicitly how to use it. And it does take a lot of practice.
If you can learn it in 2 days of about 3 hours each day, I would say that's pretty easy, and that's what it takes here.
I would say that's great, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You wanted to show us something else here, I think.
Yes, I wanted to describe the program so that this becomes a skill that any person in the community could learn. In other words, public health provider or a nurse or a massage therapist or anybody who likes to help their neighbor and help them out of the distress, probably the worst distress they ever had in their lives, and to deal with it much the same way as you would say with undernutrition, or scurvy is a better example that I use in the book. There was a time when scurvy was a dreaded medical condition, and everybody died of it. But once it was found that certain foods could actually cure it, not just treat it, that was the end of that nightmarish time period of hundreds of years.
Primarily vitamin C. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Simple enough, but
yes.
Goodness, it took us a long time to figure that out, didn't it?
Yes, it did. We didn't figure it out. We got that gift from an Indian person, an American Indian person, native. And then we chose to discard it because probably it interfered with commerce, and there were about 300 to 400 years of terrible distress which the medical profession just turned the other ear to.
Wow.
Although it is said that the screams of the scurvy patients were deafening when you came into the room where they were lying on their cots, bleeding from their gums and not being able to stand an item of clothing on them due to the extreme pain.
Wow.
And turning a deaf ear to that because the profession said it was not scientifically proved,
Right.
to me is sin of the worst kind.
And the same thing went on with malaria. It couldn't come from mosquitoes. There's no way. And that
Well,
certainly has been well proven. Yeah.
I don't know the details about the malaria story, but we certainly have a story on cancer that will never be forgotten, I hope. And I am trying to get the public interested in establishing their own investigating agencies so that the dependence on the medical profession goes way down.
Mm-hmm.
Step number one is learning what you have. But